Have you ever stopped to think that everything you've been taught about the beginning of civilization might be just a small part of a much deeper, forbidden truth? Why do the sands of the Sahara hold ruins that defy logic? And why have the names of the first African kings been carefully erased from history books? What if I told you that, long before the pyramids, there was an era where gods and men shared the same bread and the same destiny in the heart of Africa? Today, we will break the seal on knowledge that has been guarded for millennia beneath the silence of the jungles and the mystery of the sacred mountains. We will journey to the first earth, the spiritual cradle of humanity, to discover the solar lineage that gave rise to all that we know. It is a journey that will forever change how you see your own blood and the power that dwells in your ancestry. Before we reveal the first secret of this forgotten prophecy, I want to know, are you ready to hear what official history has tried to hide? If you seek the truth beyond what the eyes can see, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because this is where the hidden becomes light. Leave your like to strengthen this chain and comment below from which part of the world you are listening to this ancient revelation. Your presence here is not an accident, it is a reunion. They say that time is not a straight line, but a breathing circle. And it all began at a point where the sky kissed the African soil. Long before the known dynasties, there was a time called the first time, where the light did not come from the sun, but from the vibrant earth itself. In that era, the savannas and forests were not just landscapes, but the living body of a consciousness that pulsed in every leaf and sacred stone. The map of this ancient world did not resemble what schoolbooks show us today, for the rivers flowed with the gold of wisdom. The coordinates of the first earth are engraved in the silence of the deserts, waiting for someone with spiritual eyes to be able to read them again under the moonlight. It was a land where walking was a prayer and breathing was a contract of communion with the infinite and profound cosmos. In this setting of absolute purity, the first mountains served as natural altars that touched the stars from whence the ancients claimed to have come. There was no separation between the physical and the sacred, for the geography itself was a mirror of the constellations that shine upon the continent. It was the cradle of existence, the 0 point of the human soul, where the first mystery was planted like a seed of eternal power. The winds of that era carried secrets that we now desperately try to decipher in ruins, covered by the dust of millennia that followed. Anyone who looked to the horizon would see cities of light that defied gravity and the understanding of modern logic that limits our current vision. Everything was possible because the connection to the original source was intact, flowing like warm blood in the veins of the first conscious beings. However, behind this perfect harmony, a subtle shadow began to take shape on the horizon, setting the stage for the first great conflict. Legends whisper that something extraordinary was about to emerge from the primordial waters to change the destiny of all creation. What emerged from that sacred silence would begin a lineage that history has tried but never managed to completely erase. In the beginning, when time was still a baby, the heart of Africa pulsed with an energy that the wise called Zep Tepi. It was not just a place on the map, but a sacred moment where stardust settled upon the red, fertile soil. The savannas were bathed in a mystical light, and the air carried the scent of resins that today only exist in our deepest dreams. But, you know, this harmony hid a secret that the desert sands swore to keep under lock and key for all eternity. Ancient rumors say that the continent's geography was designed by hands that did not belong to this world, creating invisible energy channels. They say that if you put your ear to the right ground, you can still hear the beating of this primordial heart that never stopped beating. Imagine walking through a garden where every stone is a monument and every river a vein of pure, crystalline knowledge. The first inhabitants didn't need books, for wisdom was written in the constellations that shone so close they seemed within reach. It was a perfect dance between what is seen and what is felt, a balance that kept heaven and earth united. This spiritual connection was so strong that the ancients could shape reality simply with the sound of their voices in harmony with nature. Each mountain served as an antenna for the mysteries above, and the people of that era lived for centuries, for death was merely a smooth transition. It was an age of glory that defied any logic that modern historians try so hard to impose on us. However, a subtle shift in the wind began to foreshadow that something grand was about to descend from the heights and walk among us. The waters of the Great Lakes began to shimmer with an otherworldly blue, signaling that the seed of life was about to blossom in a new way. What happened next would forever change the DNA of humanity. But the secret was only beginning to sprout from the earth. Deep down where mystery takes shape, the Great Spirit Nith breathed a sigh that made the very void tremble with life. It wasn't just any breath, you see. It was as if a forgotten melody had taken shape, mingling the fire of the stars with the fertile mud of the banks of the original Nile. In that instant, pure consciousness decided it was time to experience what it is to be flesh, bone, and a vibrant soul. But look at this curious thing. This creation didn't happen by chance, because there was a secret design hidden in every atom of dust. Neith's breath carried light codes that taught the cells to organize themselves into patterns of absolute and divine beauty. It was the birth of the first DNA. An invisible web that connected humans directly to the Creator's throne without the need for intermediaries. Imagine the scene, the red clay of the earth beginning to pulsate and rise, taking on the contours of kings and queens who were born already crowned with wisdom. They were not merely people, but living temples where spirit and matter forged a pact of eternal fidelity and mutual protection. Everything was bathed in a golden light that emanated from within, illuminating humanity's first steps into darkness. This sacred fusion allowed the first ancestors to converse with animals and understand the secret dialect of the rarest medicinal plants. It was a symbolic journey where every gesture had a profound meaning, and life was lived as a grand ceremony of gratitude to the invisible. They felt the pulse of the universe beating in their own chests, in a communion that today seems like a distant fairy tale. But all this perfection began to attract the gaze of entities observing everything from above, from the depths of the dark sky. Something was being woven into the fabric of reality, something so powerful that it would require the physical presence of beings who governed the galaxies themselves. The breath of life had awakened a cosmic curiosity, and the first great visitors were already on their way to claim their thrones on Earth. In the blink of an eye, the sky opened, and beings of dazzling brilliance, known as the Neteru, descended upon the sacred mountains of Africa. They were not distant gods, but guides who walked side by side with men, bringing technologies that seemed like pure magic to mortal eyes. With cloaks that reflected the constellations, they became the first shepherd kings, ruling not through fear, but through an authority that emanated from the cosmos itself. These celestial rulers brought with them secrets that modern science still struggles to fathom in the darkness of ignorance. They knew how to align stones with the Earth's magnetism and how to heal the body using only sound frequencies that came from the stars. However, there was a forbidden mystery. Not all the knowledge they brought was to be revealed at once, for the human mind was still learning to cope with so much power. Under the guidance of these star kings, the first cities were built with architecture that perfectly imitated the lost paradise. Each temple was an exact replica of a star dwelling, serving as a bridge for divine energy to flow uninterruptedly to the people. It was a journey of learning where humanity was honed like a rough diamond, under the watchful and stern yet loving gaze of their celestial masters. The unfolding of this reign brought an era of abundance that our myths today call the Golden Age, where famine and disease were memories of a forgotten past. The solar lineage of the Neteru mingled with the blood of the earth, creating a dynasty of demigods who would guard the memory of our origin for millennia. They were the link between the infinite and the finite, the architects of a civilization that defied the very passage of time. But as the glory spread, a question began to echo through the quartz corridors of the palaces. For how long could such different beings coexist on the same plane? An invisible tension began to vibrate between the dimensions, and rumors of a city made of pure crystal, hidden in the depths of the jungle, began to surface. What the gods had secretly built beneath the treetops was about to be discovered. Far from prying eyes, protected by the dense embrace of the rainforest, stood a city whose crystal walls reflected the rainbow even at night. This refuge, attributed to the sage Enki, was not made of stone or clay, but of a substance that seemed to condense starlight into perfect geometric forms. There, the sound of running water mingled with technological hums that official history insists never existed before our time. The mystery of this invisible metropolis lies in the fact that it functioned as a gigantic laboratory of ancestral life and wisdom, now buried under layers of oblivion. Whispered accounts say that its buildings were capable of floating on water, and that its libraries held the memory of worlds that existed before our moon appeared in the sky. It was a center of such intense spiritual power that the surrounding fauna itself seemed to evolve into more intelligent and mystical forms. Exploring these transparent corridors was like stepping into a dream where technology and nature were one, without pollution or destruction. The ancient inhabitants of Enki knew how to extract energy from the very air, transforming atmospheric electricity into comfort and illumination for all their brothers. It was a symbolic journey back to the future, where mastery of matter served only to elevate the soul and facilitate contact with higher planes. In that city of light, the first secrets of genetic engineering and deep astronomy were shared between gods and trusted men. Spirituality was the foundation of every invention, and each machine had a sacred purpose: to balance the forces of nature rather than exploit them. It was there that humanity received the tools to become the guardian of the planet, assuming a role of authority that today seems to have been lost in the dust of centuries. But you know how it is? Such brilliant secrets often cast equally long shadows, and the location of this city began to be coveted by those whose hearts were not pure. While Enki's crystal shone intensely, the first objects of physical power began to be forged to protect or dominate this knowledge. The emergence of a mysterious staff and flail was about to change how power was viewed on primordial Earth. In the hands of the first rulers, two objects emerged that were not simple tools, but instruments of a spiritual science that we can hardly imagine today. The staff and flail, which many see only as symbols of shepherds and farmers, were in fact resonance keys capable of tuning the Earth's energy to the king's will. Legends say that these pieces vibrated at such a high frequency that they could calm storms or open paths through deep waters. The great mystery of these artifacts lies in their solar origin, for the rods seem to absorb daylight to emit a soft, protective glow during nights of danger. There was a hidden science in the way the metal was bent, and in the inscriptions that ran along its surface, functioning as a code that only the blood of the royal lineage could activate. Whoever held the staff without the proper spiritual initiation felt the weight of 1,000 mountains, for divine authority could not be stolen by impure hands. This journey of leadership through symbolism showed that true power came from the ability to guide the people, just as a shepherd guides his flock to safe pastures. The staff represented mercy and direction, while the flail symbolized discipline and protection against forces that attempted to disrupt the order of the world. It was a symbolic dance between heaven and earth, where the king became the central pillar that prevented chaos from dominating the first earth. Spiritually, these objects functioned as extensions of the ruler's own soul, allowing him to connect with the planet's magnetic field to ensure bountiful harvests and peace among the tribes. It was a silent pact. As long as the king held his scepter raised in the name of justice, the sun would continue to bless the land with its life. The solar lineage was not about material wealth, but about the sacred responsibility of keeping the fire of wisdom burning in the heart of every man and woman. But as these symbols of power became more widely known, the way people communicated also began to change, taking on magical and dangerous dimensions. A new way of speaking and writing was being born, where words carried the weight of prophecy and the power to create or destroy entire universes. The secret of the language of the firebird was about to be revealed, bringing with it the gift of creation through the word. In ancient times, words were not merely sounds thrown to the wind, they were seeds of pure power that sprouted in the physical world as soon as they were spoken. The sages of that era mastered the language of the firebird, a sacred dialect where each syllable vibrated at the exact frequency of creation. If an initiate described rain, clouds would immediately form in the sky, for the word was the brush that painted reality itself onto the canvas of existence. The great secret behind this forgotten language lay in the connection between the throat and the heart, a channel that today seems to be clogged by so many modern distractions. It wasn't about grammar, but about a sonic mathematics that aligned human thoughts with the breath of the stars. They say that the first hieroglyphs weren't drawings, but vibrational maps that, when read aloud, could heal incurable wounds or lift granite blocks without the touch of a single hand. This journey through sound led seekers to understand that the universe is nothing more than a great symphony in constant movement and expansion. Each animal and each plant had its true name, and knowing that name meant having a deep and respectful friendship with the essence of that being. It was a form of poetic and visual communication, where the conversation between two beings created mental images so clear that they seemed as solid as rock. Spiritually, the use of this language demanded absolute purity of intention, for a word spoken in anger could cause earthquakes in the soul of the one who heard it. The god-kings taught that silence was the fertile ground where the sacred word should be planted so that it could bear fruits of light and order. The world was a mirror of what was said, and the harmony of the first earth depended directly on the sweetness and truth that came from the mouths of its leaders. However, to ensure that this sonic power did not descend into chaos, mysterious figures emerged, tasked with watching over the destiny of each soul and of the nation itself. They were the guardians of Ayanmo, beings who perceived the invisible webs of time and knew exactly when silence should prevail over speech. The next mystery lies in the eyes of those who saw the future even before it was dreamed by the first ordinary man. Seated in stone circles that seemed to vibrate with the pulse of the earth, the guardians of Ayanmo were the eyes that saw what no one else dared to look upon. They understood that each human life was like a silken thread in a gigantic tapestry woven by the hands of destiny even before birth. For these priests, time was not a prison, but a wide river where they could dive in to see the consequences of every choice made by the kings and the people. The mystery of these wise men lay in their ability to read the Ayanmo, the destiny chosen by the soul before the Creator, before descending to the physical world. They possessed obsidian mirrors and sacred shells, which, when cast, revealed the hidden paths and traps that darkness tried to place in the way of the righteous. They were not merely diviners, but architects of balance, ensuring that the divine will was not trampled by the ego or greed of men. In this journey through the invisible, the Guardians taught that each person carries a unique mission, a brilliance that only they can manifest on First Earth. They performed rituals where the initiate was led to encounter their own ancestral self, recovering memories of lives lost in the folds of time. It was a process of profound healing, where the individual understood that their existence was not an accident, but a fundamental piece in the puzzle of the universe. Spiritually, the role of these priests was to keep the portal between heaven and earth always open and clear of any negative interference. They were the nation's lightning rods, absorbing spiritual tensions and transforming them into practical wisdom for the community's daily life. Through chants that imitated the sound of the celestial spheres, they kept the connection with the Neteru alive, ensuring that the counsel of the gods never failed to reach the king's ears. However, even the Guardians knew that the physical body needed constant renewal to bear the weight of so many spiritual revelations. They pointed to the waters of the great rivers, which held a regenerative power that went far beyond cleansing the skin. The next secret was submerged in the deep currents of the Primordial Water ritual, where immortality and purification became a single, powerful reality. On the banks of rivers that meandered like silver serpents, the ancients performed the ritual of the Primordial Water, a secret that cleansed not only the body, but the very soul. They believed that these waters did not only come from the mountains, but sprang from an invisible celestial ocean that carried the memory of all that had ever existed. To immerse oneself, there was like returning to the womb of creation, where each drop of water contained healing codes capable of reorganizing the essence of life. The mystery behind this ritual lay in the water's ability to absorb the intentions and prayers of those who bathed in it with reverence. The priests knew that the water of the first earth had a different crystalline structure, capable of storing light and transmitting knowledge directly to the blood of those who touched it. It is said that initiates emerged from these baths with their skin glowing slightly, as if they had been touched by a cold fire that removed all the exhaustion of time. This symbolic journey of purification was essential for kings to enter temples and converse with the deities, without carrying with them the impurities of the outside world. Water functioned as a sacred filter, a liquid boundary between the profane and the divine that demanded total surrender and a transparent heart. It was a moment of absolute silence, where the only permitted sound was the murmur of the current, which seemed to whisper ancient advice into the ears of the most attentive. Spiritually, the ritual reinforced the idea that life is an eternal flow, and that nothing remains static in the great dance of the African universe. Upon emerging from the waters, the individual was considered reborn, someone who had left behind the shells of the past to embrace a new version of themselves. This connection with the liquid element was what kept the civilization in harmony with the cycles of the moon and tides, ensuring that the spirit never dried up in the face of difficulties. However, tension began to rise when the once calm waters began to reflect shadows that did not belong to the known physical plane. The Guardians noticed that the reflection of the sky was no longer the same, and an omen of separation began to hover over the banks of the sacred rivers. The world was about to face the Great Divide, an event that would forever change the way gods and men looked into each other's eyes. Suddenly, a chill ran down the spine of the first earth as the stars seemed to drift apart, beginning what the sages call the Great Divide. It was not a stone wall that rose, but an invisible veil of dense mist that began to separate the direct touch of the gods from the sight of ordinary men. That vibrant proximity, where one could shake the hand of a Neteru, began to dissipate like smoke in the wind, leaving a deep void in the heart of humanity. The mystery of this event lies in a shift in the planet's own frequency, as if Earth had decided to vibrate at a different note from the melody of the sky. Some say it was a choice made by the gods themselves, so that humans would learn to walk on their own 2 feet, while others whisper of a sacred disobedience that shattered the mirror of harmony. The fact is that the crystal portals began to close, and the cities of light suddenly became silent and distant. This journey of separation transformed what was once coexistence into longing, and what was presence into mystical and ritualistic memory. Men now had to strain their eyes to see what was once obvious, and the search for the divine became a steep and obstacle-filled path. It was the birth of faith as we know it, a desperate attempt to rebuild the bridge that connected the African heart to the throne of the stars. Spiritually, the division brought a bitter but necessary lesson about the responsibility of tending to one's own inner light, without the constant assistance of masters. The rituals became more complex, as it was now necessary to call upon those who had previously always been at the table, sharing bread and knowledge. The earth became denser, the work heavier, and time began to be counted in hours of waiting for the return of an era that seemed to slip through one's fingers. However, before the connection was completely severed, the gods left secret coordinates for a place that would maintain its original purity untouched for several more millennia. Rumors of caravans laden with incense and gold began to circulate, pointing in a direction where the sun never seemed to truly set. The mystery of Punt, the legendary land of God, was about to emerge as the last refuge of magic in the land of mortals. On the shores where the desert meets the sea, the kingdom of Punt arose, a place so sacred that the ancients called it the land of God. It was not merely a trading post, but a living sanctuary, where the fragrance of myrrh seemed to emanate from the very rocks and the breath of the people. There, the golden masks were not simple adornments of wealth, but faces sculpted to reflect the glory of ancestors that still whispered through the precious metal. The great mystery of Punt is that it functioned as an embassy between the 2 worlds, maintaining trade in substances that nourished the spirit. The navigators who set sail in search of its treasures sought not only merchandise, but secrets on how to prolong life and appease the furious gods. It is said that the inhabitants of Punt possessed eyes that shone with an intelligence not of this plane, guarding the entrance to dimensions that the rest of the world had already forgotten. Imagine caravans arriving and encountering incense trees that wept tears of sacred resin under the command of ancestral chants. Each exchange of goods was a ritual of respect, where gold was offered in exchange for wisdom and spices served to open the gates of perception. It was a symbolic journey of return to purity, where modern man of that time could still touch the hand of the divine through beauty and aroma. Spiritually, the golden masks of Punt served so that leaders could don the identity of the gods in times of great national need. By putting on the mask, the individual ceased to be an ordinary man and became a channel for justice and the clear vision of the stars. This connection kept Punt protected from invasions, for who would dare attack a people who walked under the visible shadow of primordial and eternal deities? However, not all who descended from heaven had intentions as pure as the inhabitants of this blessed land. While Punt celebrated the light, a silent and fierce dispute began to divide the celestial lineages behind the scenes of unseen power. The next secret reveals that the peace of First Earth was about to be tested by a conflict of wills that would echo through all future generations of humanity. High above, where the stars usually gossip about the fate of men, a crack began to appear in the council of the gods. Not all the Neteru saw humanity with the same eyes full of tenderness and patience. While some wanted to give us wings to fly through the cosmos, others believed we were merely servants who should keep the gears of the world turning without asking too many questions. This conflict of the lineages transformed the blue sky into an invisible battlefield, where the prize was the very soul of Africa. The mystery of this dispute lies in frequencies that our hearing can no longer perceive, but which the stones of the temples still hold within their cracks. It is said that some gods gave humanity the fire of consciousness, allowing us to question the order of things and seek our own divinity. On the other side, beings of a more severe lineage attempted to impose veils of forgetfulness, so that we would feel small and dependent on their celestial orders and whims. It was a symbolic journey between total freedom and the safety of a golden cage, where each tribe had to choose which master to follow. This cold war between immortals left deep marks on our psychology, creating that eternal struggle we feel today between the desire to be free and the fear of the unknown. The battlefields were not made of mud, but of ideas and dreams, where each spiritual victory changed the course of a river or the direction of a sacred wind. Spiritually, this rift in heaven gave rise to the first great human rebellions, when we learned that not all authority that comes from above is necessarily just. The kings of that time needed sharp discernment, so as not to be used as pawns in a cosmic chess game they barely understood. Wisdom became a weapon of defense, and prayer became a shield against the influences of those who saw in human potential a threat to their own eternal power. But realizing that the darkness of oblivion was gaining ground, the gods who loved us decided to hide what was essential before everything was lost. They knew that a great cleansing event was coming, and that the memory needed to be protected in a vault that time could not corrode. The secret now rested in an ark of ancestral memories, which awaited the right moment to be buried beneath the waters and the silence. Before the clouds grew heavy with the promise of a great flood, the guardians of light built the Ark of Ancient Memories. It was no ordinary wooden boat, but a receptacle of pure energy where every secret about immortality and the origin of the stars was sealed in emerald and gold plates. They knew that humanity would endure a long spiritual winter, and that knowledge needed a safe place to sleep while the world was washed by the waters of destiny. The mystery of this ark lies in the fact that it does not hold physical objects, but vibrational frequencies that can be accessed by those who achieve a state of purity of heart. It is said to have been hidden at a point where the currents of the Nile and Niger rivers intersect on a spiritual plane invisible to greedy eyes. Many explorers have searched for this treasure, but the Ark has a life of its own. It becomes transparent as air before those who seek power instead of wisdom to serve others. This journey of preservation was an act of extreme love by the first kings, who knew that one day their children would forget who they truly were. By hiding the Ark, they ensured that the divine spark would never be completely extinguished from the face of the African earth, even under the weight of millennia of silence. It was a capsule of spiritual time, protected by sentinels that do not age, and by seals that are only broken by the correct musical note, intoned by the voice of truth. Spiritually, the Ark represents the part of us that remains intact, no matter how many times official history tries to tell us that we are limited or transient. It is the vault of our true identity as cosmic beings who chose the earthly experience to learn about light and shadow. While the world outside was lost in wars and divisions, the core of African wisdom remained vibrating in silence, awaiting the awakening of a new human consciousness. However, while the Ark rested deep underground, the eyes of the ancients remained turned towards the sky, following the movement of stars that modern science would only discover much later. There was a direct connection between what was buried in the African soil and the bluish glow of a distant star that the Dogon knew very well. The next secret takes us beyond our atmosphere, towards the profound mysteries that link Africa to the Sirius system. High above, Where the Mali sky seems to touch infinity, the Dogon people already held in their eyes the gleam of a star that the rest of the world didn't even know existed. Without telescopes or metal lenses, they conversed with Sirius, but not the one everyone sees, rather its invisible companion, made of a matter so heavy that a grain of it would weigh tons. This astronomical knowledge did not come from cold calculations, but from a legacy left by the masters who descended from the stellar waters to the first earth. The great mystery of these connections lies in the mathematical precision that ancient Africans used to align their lives with the pulse of this distant solar system. They knew that Sirius was the spiritual engine that propelled the evolution of consciousness on our planet, functioning as a beacon for souls seeking return. It is said that, on certain sacred nights, a channel of light opens between the continent and this star, allowing sacred information to travel instantaneously through the vacuum of space. This stellar journey shows that Africa was never isolated, but was the center of a galactic network of information exchange and vital energy. The Dogon rituals, with their masks that imitate aquatic beings, are actually visual reminders of a visit that changed our biology and our understanding of time. It was a symbolic dance between the micro and the macro, where the dust of the villages mingled with the dust of the galaxies in an embrace of pure cosmic fraternity. Spiritually, this connection with Sirius taught that we are made of the same substance that shines in the vacuum, and that our origin is far nobler than history books dare to admit. The ancients knew that, by looking at the sky, they were looking at their past and their future simultaneously, in a cycle that never ends. This wisdom kept the human ego in check, reminding everyone that we are only a part of a much larger, living and intelligent organism. However, while eyes sought the stars, the hands of men here on Earth began to feel the weight of new times, where the stones of the sacred stelae began to be toppled. An era of concealment was knocking at the door, and the monuments that told these truths would be the first targets of forced oblivion. The next secret speaks of the erasure of memories, when the glories of the past began to be converted into dust and silence. As the ages passed, a frigid wind blew across the continent, bringing with it the desire to extinguish what was too bright to be controlled. The great stones, called stelas, which narrated the descent of the gods and the exploits of the first kings, began to be toppled or buried under mountains of sand. It was not only time that acted, but human hands moved by the fear of that ancestral freedom, that the ancient memories awakened in the hearts of the people. The mystery behind this erasure is that the words engraved on the rock were not simple letters, but seals that kept the connection with the spiritual world active and vibrant. When these stones were broken, or their inscriptions sanded away, it was as if a telephone wire to heaven was cut, leaving humanity groping in the dark. Official history began to be written with the ink of forgetfulness, transforming gods into mere fables and the first kings into dust from fairy tales. In this journey of silencing, what was once shared knowledge became a secret of the few, whispered only in the shadows of caves and in the hearts of the last initiates. It was a symbolic effort to transform Africa, the cradle of light, into a place of impenetrable mysteries and supposed ignorance in the eyes of the arriving foreigner. But the truth is stubborn, you see. It hid in the subtext of songs and in the designs of weavings, waiting for the right moment to be shouted again into the sun. Spiritually, this period was a trial by fire for the African soul, which needed to learn to keep its greatness within itself without needing external monuments to validate it. Resistance was not waged with swords, but with the preservation of oral tradition, where each grandfather became a living library and each proverb a shield against historical falsehood. Faith did not die. It merely plunged into the deep waters of the spirit, where no invader or emperor could ever reach or completely destroy it. But while the stones were being removed from the squares, the African soil itself continued to shout the truth through its natural and monumental form. The mountains could not be torn down, and the ancients knew that certain rock formations were in fact maps of a sacred geometry that no erasure could conceal. The next secret is etched into the peaks and valleys, revealing that the earth itself is a giant antenna tuned to the divine. Look at the mountains that pierce the African sky, and you will see that they are not there by mere chance of nature. Ancient kings knew that certain elevations were natural pyramids, shaped by a sacred geometry that served as a meeting point between the energy of the earth and the breath of the cosmos. These rock formations were not just rock and earth, but gigantic antennas designed to capture the frequencies of the stars and distribute them as a blessing over the crops and villages. The mystery of these mountains lies in hidden chambers that vibrate in tones that the ordinary human ear has forgotten how to hear over time. It is said that within certain sacred peaks, there are immense crystals that function as light batteries, powered by the sun and the magnetism of the planet's core. Those who know the secret of their proportions can use these living mountains to heal the spirit, or even to travel between dimensions without leaving their place, simply through sound. This symbolic journey through the heights teaches us that the Earth is an intelligent organism with vital points that need to be respected and kept in balance. The first priests built their altars following the design of the constellations, making the ground a faithful mirror of the night sky. It was such perfect harmony that man did not need to fight against nature, for he was an integral part of a divinely orchestrated and beautiful mathematical equation. Spiritually, climbing these mountains represented the soul's effort to rise above petty concerns and see life from a broader perspective. Up there, where the air is thin and the silence is absolute, the voice of the gods became crystal clear again for those who had the courage to climb. It was the place where the human merged with the eternal, reminding us that our true stature is measured by our connection to what is sacred and infinite. However, as the darkness of oblivion advanced across the plains, the last beings of light realized they could no longer remain visible to the world. The glow of the mountains began to fade purposefully, and the great god-kings initiated a silent retreat to realms that time cannot touch. The next mystery speaks of this voluntary exile, when the enlightened ones left physical Africa to inhabit the invisible folds of eternity. When the fog of ignorance began to weigh on the shoulders of men, the last god-kings understood that their physical presence could no longer be sustained without causing damage to the balance of the world. They did not depart in ships or chariots, but simply took a step back, crossing the invisible walls of time to inhabit the folds of what we call the other side. It was a voluntary exile, a strategic retreat, so that the seed of wisdom would not be crushed by the weight of greed that was beginning to sprout on Earth. The mystery of this disappearance is that they never truly abandoned Africa. They merely shifted their vibrational frequency to a tone that evil cannot reach. It is said that entire cities pulsate just beneath the surface of the great jungles, vibrating at a speed that renders them transparent to our hurried eyes. Those we call enlightened have become the silent watchmen of humanity, awaiting the day when the hearts of their children are clean enough to see them again. This journey into the invisible was the greatest act of sacrifice of the first Earth, transforming physical coexistence into a spiritual quest that would demand centuries of dedication and purity. The gods left behind empty thrones and silent temples, but spread their essence in every particle of dust and in every drop of rain that falls upon the continent. They became the very spirit of the savannah, the force that makes the lion roar, and the wisdom that shines in the eyes of the simplest elders. Spiritually, the exile of the enlightened ones taught that what is truly valuable cannot be possessed by human hands, but only felt by awakened hearts. The departure of the masters left a trail of longing that became the basis of all African religions and philosophies, which desperately seek the way back home. They gave us the freedom to err and learn, but left the promise that the door would never be locked for those who knocked with the right note of truth. However, before crossing the final portal, they left a mark that no historical eraser could erase, something that would remain stored within each of us. They knew that stone can break and paper can burn, but what is engraved in blood lasts forever. The next mystery runs silently through our veins, revealing that the blood code is the last map that directly connects us to the lineage of the gods. You know, there is a lineage that neither time nor wars have been able to destroy, because it is not written on parchment, but rather in the pulse of our own veins. The ancients called this the blood code, an invisible inheritance that carries the memories of when the gods walked the earth. Every drop that runs through the body of a child of Africa is like a sacred book, silently guarding the formulas of creation and the DNA of those kings who once ruled the world with the light of wisdom. The great mystery of this code is that it functions like a biological library, waiting for the right moment to be awakened by a sound or a profound emotion. It is said that certain drumbeats and ancestral chants act as master keys, turning the locks on our genetics and releasing gifts we thought were lost. It's not just biology, it's a spiritual technology that keeps humanity connected to the divine source, ensuring that the spark of the first earth never completely goes out, no matter how hard they try. This journey through blood shows us that we are walking temples, carrying the legacy of entire civilizations in every cell of our being. When a young person feels an inexplicable calling to justice or a deep connection with nature, it is the blood of ancient kings whispering in their ears. It is a symbolic recognition that nobility does not come from metal crowns, but from a lineage of character and spiritual power that has survived centuries of silence and oppression. Spiritually, understanding the blood code is realizing that we are never alone, for we carry with us the strength of thousands of ancestors who fought so that we could be here today. This connection gives us an authority that no one can take away, a sense of identity that goes far beyond geographical boundaries or modern definitions. Blood is Ariadne's thread that guides us back home to the center of our own divinity, where the past and the future meet in a single heartbeat. But this vibration contained in the blood wasn't just kept inside bodies. It overflowed into the earth and created shock waves that shaped new cultures and cities. In a place called If, this primordial energy found a way to manifest itself through bronze and clay, attempting to capture the perfection of the gods in visible forms. The next secret takes us to the heart of Nigeria, where the If resonance attempted to rebuild what time dared to destroy. In the heart of Nigeria, where the ground seems to vibrate with the echo of ancient voices, the city of Ife emerged as an earthly mirror of divine perfection. The master craftsmen there worked not only with their hands, but with their souls, fusing bronze and terracotta into faces that seemed to breathe. These sculptures were not merely art, they were receivers of a sacred resonance, capturing the serenity and power of the god-kings of the first earth so that humanity would never forget its own divine face. The great mystery of these works lies in their absolute technical perfection, which challenges historians who believed that such refinement was impossible at that time. It is said that the faces of Ife possess mathematical proportions that align the observer with the frequency of original peace and justice. Each stroke and each detail in the metal functioned as a visual code, capable of transmitting centuries of hidden wisdom directly to the subconscious of anyone who dared to gaze upon these statues. This journey through physical form was a desperate and beautiful attempt to keep the flame of civilization alive when the gods had already withdrawn into the invisible realm. By shaping bronze, the people of If were, in fact, trying to anchor the spirit of the Neteru in matter, creating anchors of light that would prevent African culture from being swept away by the current of oblivion. It was a poetic resistance where beauty served as a shield against barbarity and as a reminder that paradise was once a real place on the continent. Spiritually, the If resonance teaches us that creativity is the most powerful tool for awakening human consciousness. Through art, initiates were able to access memories stored in the blood code, transforming abstract feelings into solid forms of reverence and authority. Each bronze head was a portal, a static bridge that allowed the devotee to feel the real presence of those who ruled the world when time was still young and pure. But while these statues remained motionless and majestic, time continued its cycle, and ancient prophecies began to speak of a moment when the silence would finally be broken. Legends whisper that the gods have not died, they merely sleep, and the world is beginning to show signs that the awakening is closer than we imagine. The next mystery concerns the unseen signs that announce the return of the ancient lords of light to the stage of history. You know, there's a whisper that runs through the cracks in the pyramids and the roots of the ancient baobab trees, saying that the sleep of the giants is coming to an end. It's not a physical awakening, like in the movies, but a vibration that is beginning to shake the dust from our sleeping souls. The awakening of the sleepers is an invisible phenomenon, where the ancient secrets of the first earth begin to sprout in the minds of young people, artists and seekers, as if a global antenna were being switched on again. The great mystery of these signs is that they don't appear in newspapers, but in collective dreams and intuitions that defy the logic of the modern world. People who have never met are beginning to draw the same symbols and hear the same melodies that echoed in Enki's crystal palaces. It's as if the veil of the Great Division is thinning, allowing the light of that golden age to seep into our present, bringing answers to questions we didn't even know how to ask. This journey of rediscovery is punctuated by synchronicities that seem magical to skeptics, but which, for our ancestors, were simply the natural order of things. Forgotten monuments are being revealed by changes in the soil, and technologies that seemed impossible are beginning to be understood through a new spiritual lens. It is a symbolic movement of return to origins, where humanity begins to realize that the future is not ahead of us, but held within the wisdom we have left behind. Spiritually, this awakening functions as a call for each of us to assume our role as guardians of life and planetary harmony. The sleeping gods are, in fact, the latent powers within each human being who chooses to honor their lineage and their connection to the sacred. When we stop seeking external heroes and begin to manifest the justice and wisdom of the Neteru in our actions, the portal to the first earth opens within us, transforming the everyday into something divine. However, this renewed awareness presents us with a powerful and, at the same time, provocative image, the vision of a throne awaiting its rightful heir. For millennia, Africa's place of spiritual authority seemed vacant in the eyes of the world, but the golden chair was never destroyed. The ultimate mystery leads us to reflect on what it means, after all, to occupy this space, and what our part is in this royal heritage that has survived the test of time. Deep within the universe, where the first ray of light touched African soil, lies an empty throne that the sands of time have never fully buried. This seat is not made of physical gold, but of a spiritual authority awaiting those who have learned to read the stars and listen to the heart of the earth. It represents the space left by the god kings, a silent reminder that true leadership comes not from force or dominion, but from the ability to serve as a bridge between heaven and humanity. The mystery of this throne lies in the fact that it cannot be occupied by a single person, but rather by a collective consciousness that is awakening in every corner of the world. It is said that to symbolically sit in this chair of light, one must first unlearn the lies we have been told about who we are and where we come from. The empty throne shines intensely every time a child of Africa recognizes their own divinity, sending out shockwaves that disintegrate the chains of forgetfulness and submission. Our journey has brought us here to understand that we are not merely spectators of a dead history, but the direct heirs of a glory that has never faded. The symbol of the throne invites us to assume the responsibility of rebuilding the harmony of the first earth amidst the chaos of the modern world. It is a call for every action to be guided by the wisdom of the Neteru, transforming our reality into a new garden of possibilities, where justice and beauty walk hand in hand once more. Spiritually, the empty throne is a mirror that reflects back to us the image of our own capacity to create worlds and heal ancestral wounds. It challenges us to look at the past, not with melancholy, but with the reverence of those who know that the blood of kings still runs hot and powerful. By accepting this legacy, we cease to be orphans of official history and become the architects of a future that honors every breath of Neith and every stone erected by the ancients. Now, as the sun sets on the horizon of memory, a final question hangs in the air, vibrating like the string of a divine harp. The secrets have been revealed, the symbols exposed, and the lineage acknowledged. But what will we do with this power that has just been returned to our hands? The end of this story is only the beginning of an even greater revelation that you are about to experience in your own life, if you have the courage to look at what has been hidden. As we close this portal of memories today, feel the weight and glory of all that has been revealed under the sky of the first earth. What you have heard are not merely tales of a dead past, but the living pulse of a lineage that has survived time, silence, and oblivion. The story of the gods and kings of Africa is your own story, a spiritual map that reminds us that greatness never left. It merely awaited the right moment to awaken in your heart. Many mysteries still lie dormant beneath the golden sands and at the bottom of the sacred waters, waiting for those who have eyes to see beyond the veil. May this journey have brought new meaning to your quest, and may respect for our ancestors be the light that guides your steps in the modern world. Always remember, the blood that runs in your veins carries codes of power that no historical eraser can erase. And true royalty is born from the awareness of who you truly are. If this revelation touched your soul, don't let the flame die out here. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue receiving the keys that unlock the secrets of hidden civilizations and African wisdom. Your journey through forbidden knowledge is only beginning, and there is still much to be revealed. May the strength of the Neteru and the wisdom of the ancient kings accompany you until our next meeting.